I've been a little bit obsessed lately with studying goddesses. I don't know what it is. Well, that's a lie. I do know what it is. I do very much know what it is. There is something that has been so effing powerful about researching mythological goddesses, archetypes of feminine deities all throughout history, all throughout different cultures and religions. I have found within them this nugget of empowerment. I feel like there's something so incredible about the way that I felt called to this particular area of study. You know, I'm a nerd. I'm a Virgo, and every single one of my Virgo placements, and I have I have many, they're all in my ninth house. Okay, so the fascination with the spiritual, the psychological, the whys behind our existence, and how divinity plays into that, there is no shortage of thoughts in this brain about those things. Okay, so being called to different cultural and historical expressions of divinity, that doesn't necessarily surprise me. But the fact that I felt so empowered to share this, because I nerd out about a lot of shit, you guys. I research random stuff all the time. This brain is full of a lot of information about a lot of different things. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. I know like surface level about a lot of different stuff. And then when I feel really empowered and really called to diving deeper, I do. And goddesses in the fucking world, I've been diving deep into this, okay? And again, like I said, I have found my why. I have truly found my why. And it is because the empowerment and necessity of calling upon the divine feminine at this time in our life, at this time in the collective, in the existence of humanity on this planet, in this dimension, we need to rise up. We need to rise. I've got my moon witch tarot card up here with the death card, and on it it says witches rise up. This is a period of time where witches, we need to rise up. And I say witches as divine feminines who are connected to their woo-woo, to their magic, to their spell work, which to me is just a knowledge that one, we are the magic, we are the spell, but two, giving it a symbolism as my candles go crazy, giving it a placement, giving it an altar, giving it a face makes it so much more real. It makes you feel so much more connected to that part of yourself. And we need to connect to that part of ourselves. We need to not be scared of our inner magic. We need to not be scared of the fact that, especially as feminine beings, we carry a magic. Is this news to you? Is it news to you that you are a magical fucking being? Well, I'm here to deliver the news. And that is part of why these goddesses are so important to me. And not only why they're important to me, but why I feel it is incredibly important that I force you to sit down, shut up, and listen to me tell you the tea. Because this is not just piping hot tea that is fun to know because mythology is interesting. No, mythology is teaching us something really, really important about who we are. Because I know for a fact that we are all individual deities, discovering who we are as a deity, as the divine. We are the divine expressing ourselves as human beings. And I constantly am finding myself drawn to different expressions of what that looks like. And for me, these goddesses are fascinating to me because all throughout history, all throughout many cultures, we're talking so many years ago, it would hurt your head to think about it. There has been a common thread where us as humans have found some sort of divinity and put a face to it, whether that is the Christian God, whether it's these goddesses that I talk about, whether it's any other facet of religion that you can even think about. And you know, there's billions and trillions of them, right? They are all to find meaning and purpose, and hopefully for the purpose of also finding your own power in that, right? Now, here's the thing. Okay, this particular goddess that I have felt called to really lean into lately. I'm giving her a very drawn out intro. Can you feel? I mean, you've clicked on the video, so you kind of know already the title, but I digress. Okay, this next goddess, I've been a little scared to dive into, not because I'm scared of her necessarily. To be honest, she's kind of been a peripheral presence in my life. I've kind of felt her tickle, her call for longer than I've even had this YouTube, for longer than I've even had the call to sit down and study other goddesses. It started with Aphrodite, I think it was, and then it's just developed. It's just been a snowball effect of obsession, positive obsession, to be honest. But this one, I don't know, I treaded lightly with this one. There's so much to her. She's got many facets, and we're going to get into that. Don't you worry. Many facets, but also because there's something about her that feels really, really transformative. And while the common theme of my life over the last few years, whether I like it or not, has been transformation, me and transformation have been becoming me and transformation have been becoming besties, right? But Hekate, Hekate carries something different. Hekate carries with her an intensity that I feel like you don't take the step into understanding her until you are ready. And that is not to scare you. That is not to scare you. Because even though she's got many, many layers where she would be a goddess that if you want to be small minded, she would be something you would fear, especially if you are coming off the back of Christianity. I'm going to go ahead and warn you right now, if you are in the Christian realm of things, no judgment, but this video is not for you. If you are somebody that is aware that the many layers of connecting to magic and divinity are purely based on your heart and your intention, and there's many layers of it, that it's completely personal, this video is for you. And I feel like just wanted to put that out there because so much about Hekate, one, is misunderstood, very misunderstood, as many gods are, because gods are essentially given the face and the name and the description of whomever is talking about them at the time and whatever personal relationship that person has with them. And maybe that means forcing it down other people's throats. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's whatever. Again, I digress. We're getting off a little tangent here. Anyways, Hekate is one of those ones that is very easy to misunderstand and is very easy to take and bottle up into something that doesn't necessarily serve what I feel to be her truest essence. Now, again, like all other deities, Hekate especially, your relationship with these beings is so incredibly personal. It is so personal. It is incredibly intuitive. It is what these beings represent to you at the time, the message they have for you. This is my time where I talk about what it is for me. Okay? And I'm talking about what it is for me because I feel like maybe there might be a little nugget of wisdom for you, right? Sorry, my girlfriend texted me. One sec. What was I saying? Let me go back and check what I was saying so I can make sure I'm on the right train of thought. I found it. Nuggets of wisdom for you that are in the knowledge that I have found for me, right? Now, when I say that Hekate is easy to misunderstand, I really, really mean that, because Hekate is, yes, the goddess of magic. Hold on, let me get my notes here because she's got a lot of names. All right. Magic, witchcraft, necromancy, death, ghosts, the moon. Am I missing one? Crossroads, torches. Yeah, she's got a lot of associations. And when we're talking about her in this particular context, Hekate is the name of the Greek association. And she's got, history in other areas too that go way even before Grecian history, Greek mythology. We're talking like shit. It hurts your head to think about, because Hekate, the name, I believe the origins of Hekate, the name itself, is Greek, right? But the essence of Hekate, a goddess that represents the similar things that she embodies so beautifully, that archetype has existed for centuries before the Grecians were even an idea of a thought in humanity. We're talking like the lost city of Atlantis type shit. We're talking a very long time ago, okay? And that's important because over time, these deities develop and they change when humanity's needs change and grow too. And they're given names and they're given faces and they're given imagery and they're given symbolisms based on what that particular person or culture or worshipers or the people that whatever the fuck wanted to do for that person, that being at that time. Right. And then over time, again, it changes, humanity changes. So our relationship with the divine changes. And then Hekate becomes something entirely different. Hekate herself has been adopted by Wiccan teachings. It's been adopted by neo-paganism. It was a concept in paganism before it was neo-paganism. It was the dark mother, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. She's had so many names. All right. And, not all of them wrong at all. The finding of that purpose and that meaning in her name, I feel like she appreciates that. I feel like if you can find a purpose in the transformation and the essence of Hekate, to her, her purpose is served, because ultimately she is the one that helps you find the path. But we're going to get into that. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a lot of information. Like I said, let me get to my notes so I can get back on track. All of these adaptations, they have so many complex layers that I'm really not going to get into all of them. This is not necessarily a video about the detailed historical factual evidence about Hekate. While I will be including that because I think it's important to know the background tea about these beings, you can't just dive into a... We lost an earring, friends. That's how excited we got. You can't just dive into the worship or understanding of a deity without doing your research. You just can't. Even if that means pages and pages of it. Even if that means going on going on multi-day searches on Reddit until you feel satisfied or don't feel satisfied and want to learn more. You need to understand through your own eyes, through your own life, the backgrounds of these deities, and Hecate is no different, right? So when I'm talking about her most common origins, I'm going to talk about it in the Greek mythological text because there seems to be a lot more information about that version of the origin of Hecate. So we're going to keep it simple, babe. Okay, we're going to keep it real fucking simple. Hecate, just so you understand, she was said to be the only child of the Titans Perseus and Astrea. I believe that's how they're pronounced. I'm doing my best over here, okay? Now I don't know if you remember from our last video, but we have come to understand that Titans were not just the first beings, divine beings, but they predated the Olympic gods in that Greek mythological context, right? They were also kind of they were the development of consciousness. They were the development of human consciousness. So these beings that represent different facets of Titans, the Titan of blank, the Titan of the sun, the Titan of whatever, they also rule in their own way the development of a certain part of consciousness. And to me, Hecate is also no different in this way. Now, her parents, her most commonly associated parents, because again, we have many a birth story with this one, but Perseus and Asteria. All right. Now, I'm not going to get into much to them because, to be honest, I don't know very much. I'm not going to pretend like I do, right? But the fact that she has Titan parents important because that also makes her a Titan. She's not a goddess, an Olympic goddess. She's a Titaness, which is a god of a sort, but has a different energy. Again, we're talking the basis and the foundation of human consciousness. Now, this gave her the ability to rule over all three realms, heaven, earth, and sea. This is not super common, okay? Most of the time, Titans or gods or goddesses, they would choose one or two. They would pick one or two where they could kind of flow between the heaven and the earth, whatever they kind of ruled in their individual little world. Very rarely did you find a goddess or a Titan that had access and had rule over all three realms. Now, this is important because this three-sided facetness to her goes across multiple layers of understanding her essence and the message and energy and all of the good things about her, okay? This three-sided thing originating in the fact that she had these three sides that she ruled, heaven, earth, and sea. I don't know if I've said that enough. Heaven, earth, and sea. She rules the three of them. Do you get it? Has it clicked in your brain yet? Now, Zeus and all of them, they held her in a really, really high regard, especially for the fact that she ruled all of these different fucking realms, okay? Now, the fact that she had this dominion, she had this multi-realm dominion, is huge in one of her most important stories. I'm not going to say her most important because she's got many most important. I spoke too soon. We're talking about maybe her most popular. We're talking about the one that is maybe she's associated with the most. And this was the kidnapping / potential schmexual shishmalt of Persephone when Zeus gave her away to Hades, but that isn't necessarily how it happened. All right, and Hecate played a pretty important role in this and therefore also in Persephone's life. Don't worry, I've got you. I'm going to tell you the story, okay? So one day, Persephone, she in her gorgeousness with a bunch of other goddesses and friends, was skipping la-di-da-di-da in a gorgeous field full of flowers. And they were just picking these beautiful flowers when the earth beneath her opened up into a big hole. Now, I kind of want to do a whole video on the descent of Persephone alone, so I'm not going to get too much detail about all of that. But basically, she fell through this hole where Hades was there to grab her and steal her away and take her back to his underworld kingdom. Hades, if you remember, god of the underworld, Zeus's brother. Zeus actually gave Persephone to Hades. Yeah, real nasty work. Persephone's own mother, Demeter, did not know that this was happening. Okay, so when Persephone was being stolen away against her will, she was screaming naturally for help. Now, not many of the gods and goddesses were paying attention. They were not paying attention to her cries and screams for help, but guess who did hear? Guess who did hear? Hekate. Hekate and Helios were the only ones that heard. Helios, if you remember, the god of the sun, not just the god of the sun, but the embodiment of the sun. Helios was the sun. Okay, so it was just the literal sun in the sky that sees everything, and Hekate that was paying attention to this. Now, Demeter naturally starts to go look for her daughter when she realizes that she's missing. So who helps her but Hekate? Throat chakra tingling. Hecate, with her torches, lit the way for Demeter in this journey through all of the realms to find Persephone. Not just that, but once Persephone was actually found, which was through a course of very complicated things that I will get to again in another video, because Persephone is a whole other world, right? But after she was found and subsequently everything was okay, Hecate ended up staying with her as her kind of guide and companion and associate, especially for the fact that Persephone did choose to stay in the underworld. So again, the fact that Hecate had this access to the underworld is really huge in understanding her multifaceted essence. Pause while I read my notes. And we're back. Okay, so she was very often in imagery, in arts, in art, and in stories, she is depicted carrying a torch because she is known as the torchbearer, the carrier of this light, which I think is really fascinating that she's known as this carrier of a light when she's also very often associated with like this darkness. You think of like witchcraft and spell work and sorcery and necromancy and ghosts and death and all of these things. Naturally, you're going to associate her with the darker things of life, right? But she's carrying the light. She is carrying the light in the darkness, which is huge. She's also very often depicted as a three-sided figure. Remember when we talked about how she's got these three sides? Yes, this was almost often, does that make sense? Almost always depicted very literally. Now, these faces were not human faces very often. More often than not, it was, what was it? A lion, a horse, and a dog. Oh my. But really, a lion, a horse, and a dog, or a three-headed monster. In more modern neo-paganism and Wiccan books and teachings, she takes on a little bit more of a motherly form, a little bit more of a feminine human form. But in these ancient depictions, to match the very kind of fearsome and misunderstood energy to her, her imagery also depicted this kind of mystical, kind of terrifying energy. And she was an incredibly mysterious deity with a lot of backstory and origins. Have you gotten that yet? There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of things to her. For example, there's some cultures that believed her to be this really infernal divine being, like almost a spectral being that at night would rise demons and creepy spirits from the underworld, from hell, and would send them to go teach like sorcery and spell work. She herself was, well, her and these demons and spirits and stuff were often found at crossroads, on tombs, like literally on tombstones. Sometimes would be found near the, this is so twisted, I love it, near the blood of a murdered being. So like if somebody was murdered, their blood, whatever, these spirits and demons teaching sorcery and witchcraft, they would be found near that. Hecate herself would be found very often wandering near death, near cemeteries, near just the darker side of things. And her presence itself was often, in these depictions of her, announced by the whining and howling of her dog companions. She had a lot of animal companions, and there are a lot of really interesting stories about how she got them, because most of them come down to her like saving this animal, whether it was a human being that was transformed into an animal as a punishment by another god, and so Hecate took that animal in to take care of it, or something to the nature where she was incredibly compassionate. So again, I love this like dichotomy in her energy, which we find so often if you've been paying attention in these feminine beings, in these goddesses, this incredible duality to them, and the necessity of it, the necessity of it in displaying and embodying their power. Now, to be honest, in this darker interpretation of her, this spectral being that rises with demons and sends them to do her sorcery work, even in that darker depiction, I really kind of like this badass, like she seems like a badass that I want on my side. No matter what phase of her that I experience and learn about, and even, and I'll get into my own personal relationship. Be patient. Be patient. We have to get through the nerdy stuff first, because you have to admit, you kind of enjoy it. The nerdy stuff is fun. But anyways, I feel like no matter what phase of her that I've discovered, I love what I find, as I often do. I was not surprised that that's the case. I've never discover something that I don't enjoy, even if it's darker information. I even read this really long, thoughtful Reddit thread. I was deep in the archives of Reddit, okay? I read this really cool perspective where it's kind of looking at that story of Persephone and Hekate, therefore Hekate herself. Excuse, where they were comparing it through this lens of like a Jungian perspective, which, I don't know if you know Jungian or Carl Jung, the kind of analytical psychological perspective of Carl Jung, which is fascinating and is whatever, but looking at it through this lens was really cool too, because when you look at it, this person explored the idea that Persephone and her underworld descent actually represents consciousness, our consciousness itself, undergoing the descent. Anybody who has been through some sort of consciousness awakening knows that a key part of that is a descent into darkness. You don't necessarily discover the light in the light, do you? More often than not, you are discovering the light in the darkness. So this descent of Persephone, which again will be an entirely another video that we will get to, okay? Being this representation of consciousness undergoing the descent, and Hecate, therefore, being this idea where consciousness, as it's descending, maintains the ability of remaining awake during the descent. So staying focused, keeping your light ablaze, keeping yourself in yourself during the descent, which gives her, with her torch guidance and with her multi-realm abilities and attendance, this mediating figure. She becomes this mediating figure with the ability to maneuver consciousness, maneuver through consciousness and unconsciousness, the consciousness being earth and heaven, the unconscious being the underworld, right? These realms without fully identifying with any of them. She doesn't identify with the heaven, the earth, and the underworld realms, or the sea. She doesn't identify with just one of them. She has the ability to flow through them all while remaining focused in what she is, which is an expression of all of them. It gives her this like really unique and like powerful ability to be a guide and a pathway, an illuminator of a pathway. Something huge that this author in this Jungian meets Greek mythology perspective on Reddit, something that they said that I think is really huge, especially when understanding Hecate, is, I'm going to quote it, I'm going to read it word for word. They said, a torch produces a limited and localized form of illumination, and thus reveals enough for one's next movement while leaving the surrounding darkness intact. Did you catch that? A torch does not illuminate the entire path, does it? No. More often than not, a lantern or a torch is only illuminating just the space ahead of you. It is just illuminating the steps ahead of you, which when you're on a journey, whether we want to admit it or not, is really all that's required, is just knowing the steps ahead and putting faith in that, right? Now, Hecate, as the torchbearer, she doesn't illuminate the darkness for you. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty about her as a deity, her as a being that you utilize in your daily worship, an altar that you set to her, whatever relationship you want to develop with her. When you're calling to her, when you're utilizing her energy, she does not illuminate the full darkness for you. She doesn't give you all the answers. She's not that goddess. She lights up the next step or shows the options ahead of you, but you're the one that takes the step. You're the one that makes the ultimate decision. It's this powerful conversation of sovereignty in your power. Now, like I mentioned before, because she has so many expressions, so many different types of worship, and that's truthfully part of what is so fascinating to me. It might be something that deters others because it's complicated. It's a complex energy, but that's part of what I feel so drawn to, because what it does is creates this really intuitive and deep discovery in the worship. It's something that's so incredibly personal. It has to be entirely intuitive because, again, like I've said, and I will say it, I will say it. English is really hard, apparently. As I have said, and I will say it again, okay? It is about what you feel. It is about what Hecate feels like to you. Because just like every other goddess and deity that finds their way in your life, it is about what message she senses you need in your life and pulling that from you. Okay? To me, because this video is about me, to me, Hecate, what I have found in her is very much like what she became for Persephone, a companion, a friend. She came to me, as she often does for many others, at a time of crossroads in my life. I'm at a point in my life where I'm overwhelmed with the amount of paths that are ahead of me. And I feel like sometimes when there's a lot of options, it can sometimes feel like there aren't any. Does that make sense? If you get it, you get it, right? Where sometimes the amount of paths ahead of you and the intimidating level of free will that you have in that you have the power of the choice in that can be kind of an overwhelming energy to be in. Not kind of, it's a super overwhelming energy to be in. And I'm fully confident in my capacity to get where I need to go. But because there's so many different avenues that I can take, that's the point that I'm sitting at. And it makes sense to me why Hecate would find herself into my life at this point, because I'm sitting at the pinnacle of choice in my life, which means that I want to call forth the path. I want to illuminate the path ahead of me that provides me the most direct path to my purpose, to the thing that my soul wants to express. And of course, truthfully, in my opinion, you can get to the future many a way. I don't truly believe in one destiny, one fate. I think that there is draw, I think there's karma, I think there's soul contracts, I think there's soul decisions, but ultimately, if the future's here, it's like you can do this to get there, you can do this to get there, you know what I mean? And do we not all want to take the path of least resistance? It doesn't mean there aren't obstacles. It doesn't mean there aren't things that you're going to learn. There aren't things that you're going to have to let go of. But I believe in one that there are divine paths that are easier for you, that when you open the door to them, resources pour in and things just make the path lighter. You know what I mean? And so at this point in my life, I want to illuminate the path that would make things lighter, because in my past, very often I end up, because I don't choose, I end up having to take a harder path. And that's been something I've noticed in my life, is that when I'm faced with crossroads, when I'm faced with decision, when I'm faced with the need to choose the next step in my life, sometimes I sit in this freeze moment so long that life chooses for me. And the choice that it chooses for me is the last option, because all of the other options that could have been easier, I bypassed in my indecision. And so by the time it got to the time where it's like, okay, now you need to make a choice. There's no other choice. Now you have to do this because this is the only choice that's really left. And you're going to get to where you need to go, but it's not the easiest way to get there. That's been the course of me when it comes to claiming or not claiming the sovereignty in the way that my life plays out. And I want to go about the development of my purpose in such a more powerful and bold way that I have found that this companionship of Hecate has allowed me to stand in this power, and knowing that the choice that feels the best to me, the choice that resonates in my bones, the choice that feels like what I have recognized my passion and my drive and my desire to feel like, I take that step, it's the right step, because I'm doing so with my own inner power. And at the same time, as I'm taking these steps with the lantern that Hecate provides me, and the lantern that I provide for myself, the path illuminates step by step. She's not showing me the way from here, from point A to point B. She's saying, here's point A, and here's point A, here's point A, point one, and point A, point two. You know what I mean? And that's something that I found is really huge with Hecate for me too, is like, she is not the goddess to develop a relationship with if you want a being where you can go and just throw all your problems and expect an outside divinity to fix them. That's not who she is to me. That's not who I found her to be with other people. She's the one that, again, will provide you and illuminate the paths ahead of you, but she's not going to make you take the step. She's not scared of turning your life upside down for you to learn a very important lesson. Don't get it twisted. But she's also not the one that you boss around to do your bidding. That's, I think, sometimes why she's also misunderstood, is she is associated with baneful magic, which is, the use of magic for ill intent or to do harm to others, like hexes and curses and whatever. And no shame, again, because more often than not, if you feel called to that type of spell work expression, it's probably because there are very few other avenues of justice in your life. So to each their own. Just tread lightly and do your research, because ultimately, especially with Hekate, if she's a deity that you find in the use of baneful magic, because she is associated with it, she's a very neutral deity in that way. She's neither really like ultimately good or ultimately bad, because I don't really believe that exists, but especially when it comes to her, you can pull her magic for whatever your intentions are. But with Hekate, I think more than anything, she cares about the sincerity of your heart. She cares about your heart, she cares about your heart. Did I say that enough? She cares about who you are and your intentions behind it. That's huge with her. And when it comes to this magic and hexes and all of this, the many different ways that you can utilize spell work, right? For me, she hasn't become necessarily a deity that that represents a specific type of magic so much as, for me, she's a deity that gives me the space to explore my inner woo-woo, to explore what spell work looks like to me. I cannot deny the call that I've had to candle work and certain types of, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty because I still like to keep things a little private. Even if I spill a lot of tea and talk about a lot of stuff, I still keep some stuff to myself. But the things that I do feel called to, even tarot and my oracle and channeling abilities and all the different facets of my woo-woo-ness, Hekate feels like a being that says, okay, and this is a space for you to explore what that looks like with pure intention, with your heart, knowing that you have the ultimate sovereignty and power in that expression. To me, she feels like a protector, but not necessarily in the traditional way that you may associate a deity or a being that provides protection. And that's not to say that she doesn't. A lot of times she is called upon in childbirth because she is known to be a protector of women and children specifically. But for me, she isn't necessarily the protector that comes in to protect you from what you can do yourself. When I call upon her for protection, I do so from a knowing that I am divinely protected as I am. I don't need her to protect me, but it's the cherry on top. And this is important to know if you are somebody that really speaks life and speaks protection on your life and utilizes your spell work and your magic to call upon protection. It is important that you do so from a space of knowing that you are, no matter what deity you are worshiping, no matter who you are calling upon, if you're calling upon anybody at all, or if you're just speaking the words from your heart, it is important that you know that you are doing that from a place that you are protected. And this is just the extraness, the calling upon ofness. It's not saying I'm in a place where I'm not protected and I need it. It's saying I might be sensing energy. I know ultimately I am divinely protected, and this being feels resonant in joining me in an army. I think about it like that. Like if you think about an army that's protecting you and you've got your own army, your army is sufficient. And then you call upon Hekate and she brings her army, because friends support friends. That's why to me she feels like a companion. To other people she feels like a dark mother, a strict mother entity. To me, like I said, a friend, the supporter that you call on. When you're calling a friend, they aren't doing the shit for you. That's not a healthy friendship. They're the shoulder to cry on. They're the one to empower you. They're the person to provide an alternative perspective when you need it, but you can't rely on your friends to do shit for you that you are capable of doing yourself. The same goes for Hecate. The same goes for this particular deity. And this is a developing relationship. I am never speaking from a place of expertise in this situation. I will not claim to do so. I don't like to be wrong. That's the Virgo in me, which is why I dive so much deeper into research, because I want to understand to the best of my ability. And at the same time, this is an intuitive conversation. This is me saying, this is what I feel. This is what I feel in regards to Hecate. And to me, she feels like the type to hold the lantern as you walk a dark and winding path, allowing you to witness your own strength and capability in the process, which I need in my life. I don't need right now somebody to hold my hand and drag me. I'm capable of doing that myself. What I need and what I have found in the goddess Hecate is someone that tells me that I've got this, illuminates the paths from the perspective that she has, and holds a lantern while I walk. While I walk, because I can do that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know. I believe in the power of the universe, and I think that if this video has found you and if you've watched all the way to this end, maybe there's something for you to find in Hekate if you haven't discovered her yet yourself. I think that she comes to you. I think when you are paying attention, the divine is constantly talking to you. And when you're open to exploring how your spiritual practice can develop, if you're open to the many avenues that worship can be expressed, I think sometimes you end up opening the door to beings like Hecate or Aphrodite or Persephone, who I'm really excited to do next. I think she's gonna be my next one. But um and I not to replace something that you don't have, but to show you something that you may not have realized that you already do. And I don't know. I I hope that this helps you. I hope that this helps you, and that if you are at a crossroads in your life, if you are at a place in your life like I am, where the infinite paths, the fact that there are infinite paths, has become something very apparent to you, and your own sovereignty and necessity to choose and be bold in your decision. Yeah. Burp of confirmation. Then maybe there's something to be found in Hecate's essence. Maybe you should do a little digging and talking to her. I I just trust my instincts when it comes to worshiping these beings. I don't, necessarily set the most glamorous altar, not just because I'm currently living in a space where that makes it a little difficult to do so, but because I think it has more to do with your intention. I think it has more to do with what's on your heart and what you want to know. More often than not, it's me talking and conversing with Hekate like it's a friend in the room. A really, really powerful, kind of terrifyingly badass friend. Yeah. Anyways, that's the tea. I don't know. What's on your mind? What's on your mind? What paths do you feel like need to be illuminated for you right now? Share with me. Share with me in this space. I love you. I will see you very soon.